A third cabinet minister has admitted using a property owned by one of Labour's major donors. Wes Streeting now hosted a fundraising event at Lord Alli's London home. This comes after the Prime Minister was questioned over accepting accommodation so that his 16-year-old son could revise for exams and travel to school without the press getting in the way. And also Angela Rayner was criticised for the use of a flat in New York. Also Wahid Ali's. How many flats has this guy got? There are also things like accepting Taylor Swift tickets and a hospitality box at Arsenal. Is this a big issue for your party, Ayesha?
Well, look, I understand that people are quite angry about this, but I do think you have to look at the things individually. Look, I think particularly for Keir Starmer coming in, you know, wanting to be very different from Boris Johnson, I would sort of say probably there was a kind of judgment call over taking things like free clothes and things like that, and he has kind of said he's not going to do that again. I am much more sympathetic about, for example, using the flat while his son was getting ready for GCSEs, and none of us who've got children would want kind of, you know, to disrupt our kids' education, and, you know, I kind of understand that. Honestly, I think the stuff about using Lord Alli's flat for fundraising, I just don't think that is like a sort of hanging offence, to be honest. And I just do think that there is now, it's kind of slightly being overblown. I do understand the anger about taking things for donations for clothes. I do get that, and that's something that Rachel Reeves and other people have said they're not going to do. But I just think in the grand scheme of things, it now just feels like it's been laid on a bit too thick, right? Nothing wrong has happened. And when you do, and I think it's really lazy to say, oh, this is just the same as Boris Johnson, or, you know, if you look at the corruption that went on before, Partygate, breaking the law, it's very, very different.
Let me bring Geoffrey in. What do you think? Nothing wrong has happened?
Well, the interesting thing here is that the Prime Minister missed the fact that it's often something very simple the public catch on to. They may not fully understand what's going on in the Gaza. They may not fully understand what's happening between Ukraine and Russia. But if you tell them someone's taken £70,000 for themselves, they get that immediately. And that's always been a big danger in politics. I'm sure you caught the headlines this morning in New York, where the mayor of New York has taken $100,000 from the Turks. Now, that was real money into his pocket.
Into his own personal pocket, or campaigning?
That was different,
okay.
Very
but
different.
That's the point, is it? In a way, that's not what we're dealing with here. And if you look at Wes, so this, okay, obviously Wahid Ali is a Labour peer. He's got lots of money, and he's offered people things that they need for their political life, such as flats, classically, and glasses and whatever. But I don't know whether it matters. I'm struggling with this. I can't see that it matters.
Matter? Well, certainly it won't in 4 years' time. This government has a vast majority. They will be there in 4 years' time. That is what people will remember. And people have forgotten that the first 2 years of Margaret Thatcher were pretty disastrous. Things went wrong all the time. She came through that, and by the fourth year, she was ready for an election. So yes, we're discussing it here, but the truth is it'll be irrelevant in 4 years' time.
All right, well, listen, we'd love your calls on this, 0207 862 2222, whether this, maybe what we got to say is the media, and that includes us, we are employed by stories. So we have a vested interest in stories happening. So sometimes you can feel the presence of the media in a story. Yeah. And with this one, I can feel like it's a kind of sexy story because it involves the guy's walking around with a pair of glasses he probably shouldn't have accepted, right? But I don't know whether that's as important as the national debt or the NHS or whatever.
Absolutely. And I think look, we're, 2 months into this, we've not even reached the 100 days yet. And at the end of all of this, Labour, and rightly so, will be judged on delivery. It will be judged on whether the cost of living has eased. It will be judged on whether NHS waiting lists have come down. It will be judged on, sorting out the trains, police, all of that kind of thing. And that is right. But, I understand what you're saying about the media. And I think, I'm not one of these people who's having a go at the media for covering this. But I do feel now it feels like it's slightly being labelled.
Yeah, I just don't.
Political
I don't know.
parties will have dinners in donors' houses all the time.
Yeah.
That is not like, it's not quite.
But he's not. He is a Labour lord. I mean,
But he has also somebody who has been with the party through thick and thin.
Well, that's what I'm defending you here.
He was brought in, and he's, that does often happen. Geoffrey has been a great friend of the Conservative Party for many, many decades. Often, Labour peers are or peers are great friends of their political parties.
Did you ever have, because you've got mansions, have you ever had anyone staying in one, like a Prime Minister or something?
Yes.
And it was never a scandal?
Yes. And you don't do it with that in mind, do you? You invite them because they're friends.
Yeah.
And they stay and...
But you might, let's say that I don't know who that was, let's say John Major, I'm guessing, right? So John Major comes and he stays in your vicarage in Cambridgeshire, and you say to him, look, John, you say over breakfast, I've heard a story that you're planning to put VAT on books. You wouldn't be doing that, would you? And by the way, would you like some more bacon?
Wouldn't.
Right? That's an example of how things can happen that might appear to be corrupt to an outsider.
Well, funny you should say that, because when John Major did a tour once, the Turks gave him the most beautiful carpet. I thought beautiful. And the civil servant said, you can't have anything that's worth more than £50.
Right, so he cut a little corner off.
No, they took it away from him.
Well, that's a rule. That's fair enough. He can't have his house emblazoned with gifts that were given to him as Prime Minister when he's a private citizen.
Paul
in Cardiff, hello.
Morning, Hugh.
Sorry, I don't know if you were there. Sorry, Paul. We're asking whether... Oh, hello. We're asking whether the Freebie Row is putting you off Labour.
Yes, they are. They are the latest of the lot now. You always supported Labour. Now I've gone against them. If they put things in the manifesto, they wouldn't got in power. They're liars, they're cheats, and they got everything, and we got nothing. We're pensioners, and we're poor, and they should look after the pensioners. No, they're not going after us. This is only just a start, what they're doing. There's more things to come, and everybody is going to feel a pinch what's going on. I'm sorry, I'm really against the Labour Party. And I've always supported Labour all my life. Wow,
I mean, it's 82 days and you've bailed. And there's quite a few people, Ayesha. I think it's that you think pensioners don't need £300, but you're truffling around trying to get free pairs of glasses.
Well, look, I think I can understand the anger about the winter fuel allowance. There's a huge amount of anger about that. And I think that's why when the story initially broke, the backdrop of the winter fuel allowance did make the story very problematic for the Labour Party. And yeah, I mean, I understand that there's a lot of anger, that the Labour Party is wanting to try and means test this, and they're trying to put other factors to mitigate against it. But I do understand that people are very angry about
I hear what Geoffrey says about, in 4 years' time they'll walk it. We are such a turbulent country now. If, let's say, Kemi Badenoch becomes Conservative leader, we'll talk about her later on, it's not impossible. She's Prime Minister in 4 years' time. You probably wouldn't disagree with that. Boris Johnson had an 80-seat majority and he lost it. So this stuff might matter more than we think.
Well, and there's 2 points here too. The Labour Party majority is vast, but the vote was only 33.8%.
The Loveless landslide.
Whereas when Tony Blair won, it was 39%. And he did 11 years. And the difference also is when Tony Blair came into power, he was plus 49 in people's opinions. When Keir Starmer came into power, he started off -4.
Well, no, I think he was plus 30, but he's gone down to -16.
He's plus, but he's gone down. But we were actually looking at the approval ratings, and even though he has dropped a lot, to your point earlier, he's actually kind of broadly where Margaret Thatcher was at this point when she first became
but she had the
Prime Minister.
Falklands, and we don't necessarily need another war. After the break, we're taking more of your calls on this, and whether you lost respect for Labour, maybe you regret voting for them in the first place. I can see this is all painful for our friend here. 0207 862 2222. Maybe you think, come on, let's let them just at least get their feet under the desk, presuming that they've actually paid for the desk. Sharon in Staffordshire, hi.
Oh, good morning, Jeremy and panel, Geoffrey and Ayesha. Now, I 1,000% have not got any faith in the Labour Party. I think they're a bunch of freeloaders and they're useless and they're going to ruin this country. Now, I'm going to quote what Geoffrey said. Geoffrey said they'll be here in 4 years. No, Geoffrey, they will not be here in 4 years.
I'm wondering, listen, I'm also... Wes Streeting only just won his seat. So when the tide goes out, even a little, he's got a problem. But also, I think we can't. I can't believe you just predicted the next election, Jeffrey.
But what's Nikki saying? Is she saying there'll be an election before?
A, it's Sharon. But B, what are you saying, Sharon? You're thinking that Labour will only do one term?
I said, Jeffrey said that they'll be here in 4 years' time.
Yeah.
No, they will not. You cannot speak for the public because there's a lot of the public that are not happy with them. So, no, they will not be here in 4 years.
You think they'll lose the next election?
But Sharon, how does that work?
They definitely will.
Right.
Sharon, how does that work when you've got a majority of 150?
Well, have you heard about democracy?
Now, that happened because of the Tory parties, the way they behaved. And they won't win the next one. I can guarantee you that. And
I never know whether you... And Sharon, do you know what? I can see what you just said is going to be a subject of discussions in the next 3 or 4 years, left, right and centre, because it is so interesting, because these days, a lot of these governments are built on sand. These majorities, we're not tribal like we were. People don't wear flat caps
when
anymore.
I was a child, 40% voted Conservative, 40% voted Labour,
That's it.
20% in the middle. Now in the middle is 60%.
It's just you get up on the morning, you think, who do I fancy?
Yeah,
it literally is that. Thank you, Sharon. Really interesting point. But let's see, they have got 4 more years as things stand. Nikki's in Cheshire. Hi.
Good morning, all of you.
Good morning. What do you think about the freebies?
Well, actually, I think it's appalling. And actually, what I'm really concerned about is, his lack of judgment. Because if you think about it, first of all, he comes in. We know that there's going to be a big hike in the energy costs. That I have to say, I'm nearly 81, by the way.
Well done.
Then we have we lose the winter fuel allowance. Then we hear that he is accepting all these freebies. How on earth does he think we're going to react to all of that?
Well, if you look at, we've got a picture here in front. Nikki, we've got a picture of him within the Arsenal stand, right? So that's one of them.
Right.
Now, he has given quite a good reason for that, which is that if he goes and stands with the crowd, he might get attacked by a pensioner.
Tough. And actually, there'd be a lot of pensioners waiting for him.
Well,
but why can't he pay for that himself? The Taylor Swift ticket.
Oh, but he can't pay for security himself.
Just think how many brownie points he would have earned if he'd said, I've just been offered these £12,000 worth of Taylor Swift tickets. I'm going to donate those.
All right, Nikki, we're getting so many calls. Thank you so much. I hear your anger. Honestly, noted. Loads of calls. This is fascinating. The anger is amazing. Kim in Fife, are you cross?
Very, very, very cross. And I despair. I now despair of this government. I was happy that they got in. It's the winter fuel allowance. That's why people are so angry. The people are actually going to die in the winter because they've taken this away from them. They're going to have to now choose between eating or heating. They won't be able to afford both. And it's awful. And the prediction is thousands of pensioners could die during the winter. We can't have this. We can't. It has to stop. That is why people are so unhappy that it's taken freebies.
Let me let Ayesha come in to defend the government. Kim, hang on there. Ayesha, it is this linkage, isn't it? That's the problem.
Yeah, and I've said that before. I think the two things coming together have been really difficult and problematic for people because, of course, people, particularly, as I say, I think the thing about using the flat, that's not a freebie as such, but I think that's slightly different. But I think the thing about the clothes and the glasses, I think people are understandably upset.
The Arsenal seats?
Well, the Arsenal seats, I don't know. I've had sort of mixed views on that. Right, I have had really mixed views on that. But I think on the clothes and things like the glasses, I totally understand why people are upset. But look, as I said, what this government, and I completely hear. I mean, I present 9 hours of a radio show over the weekend, so my listeners also are very, very cross about this. But at the end of all of this, the Labour government is going to be judged on what it does. And yes, people can be really, really angry with this, but the Labour government will be judged on how it runs the country and what it does for people.
Jeffrey's a big knowledge on the Thatcher government. There was a guy she had called Willie Whitelaw. And Willie Whitelaw said once, no politician should ever be seen carrying a book. because it makes them look as if they're above other people. And I think you probably could now say the modern equivalent is no politician should ever be seen at a box at a Taylor Swift concert, because it is just the ticket that your voters can't get. And I think that was a mistake being there, taking a photo showing you were there.
But can I just push back on that?
Well, yes, please push back.
I don't think that's right. I think from time to time, politicians should go to big events, right? You know, our music industry is a huge part of you know, what we, you know, our stadiums, all of that kind of thing. But I think it's how much you take, and I think it's a judgment call on how much you take, and you have to pick and choose quite wisely.
I will give you an example.
Okay, we've got a caller who wants to defend
I've been avoiding
Labour.
this, but I'll give you an example.
Go on.
When Margaret Thatcher went to Russia to see Gorbachev, a lot of time was spent on her clothes, which she got from Aquascutum. I went to visit Mr. Abrahams, who ran Aquascutum, and I said, make sure she gets a bill. She got a bill and she paid it.
You didn't pay it?
Such a simple thing to get wrong.
Well,
she was going to be in Russia with Gorbachev with those clothes. The press would have said, who paid for them?
Well, that's a very interesting point. Yeah, that was very savvy of you, Jeffrey. Anne in London, you want to defend Labour?
I do. I certainly do. Now, I am actually a Conservative supporter. I have been for many years. But I am embarrassed on how the Labour Party are being attacked on these freebies. See, politicians have a life. And what is wrong in accepting a gift if there is no conflict of interest? I'm more interested. Yes, I would have liked the Conservatives to have won. But since Labour has won, and as a British citizen, I am more interested in how they are running the country. If anything, Jeremy, I'm very embarrassed at the media, because obviously the media have got nothing else to make newsworthy, and this is what they're latching on to.
Well, that's fair. I did sort of slightly make that point earlier, but I'm still amazed by the level of anger from our callers, Anna, yourself accepted. Thank you for all your calls on this. We are getting loads. We might take a few more after the break as well. For that, we're live on Channel 5, also live on My5. Thank you so much for being with us this morning with Jeffrey and Ayesha. We've got so many calls on the Labour Freebie Row. We've got to speak to a couple more. Let's speak to Chris in Derbyshire. Hi, Chris.
Oh, good morning. Thank you for taking my call.
Not at all. I know you've been hanging on. Now, are you cross or you think you'd come on?
No, I'm very cross, actually. I mean, have any of these politicians actually seen the pension credit form?
I know. Gather it's 147 questions or something.
Yes. Not every pensioner's got access to the internet.
Right.
And we keep being told you can go to Citizens Advice Bureau and Age UK and they will help you. Yes, they will, but their lines are constantly engaged.
I know. So I'm guessing from what you say, Chris, that you are one of the estimated 880,000 people who should be on the credit and therefore getting the winter fuel payment, but you haven't been able to apply.
No, I'm one of the lucky ones. I am on it.
Okay.
But I, because of my limited vision, I had to go to Citizens Advice Bureau and ask them to fill in the form for me. Because if you tick the boxes wrong, it's null and void.
Yeah, no, I understand. Well,
politicians have got so much money, and yet the first people they are punishing are the pensioners. Why? We've worked all our lives. We've paid tax. We've paid insurance. We've brought up our family. I started work at 15.
Thank you, Chris, very much indeed. Powerfully said. Catherine in Greater Manchester, let's take your call as well. What would you like to say?
Good morning, everybody. I'm really disappointed with Labour. I'm furious with practically everything they're doing, but what I find really, really sad is that he can find a quiet space for his son to study. Now, that everybody should be able to. And does he know there's people living in containers, families living in containers, living in bed and breakfast, living in one room?
Yeah, I appreciate. What if he says, look, as the Prime Minister, he does need to have some special treatment and getting a bit of peace and quiet in the flat of Wahid Alli is part of that?
No. I'd like to know what that guy is up to, because it doesn't seem right to me.
There's a very good point. Is it not time for the Labour Party, Ayesha, to expel Wahid Ali.
Why?
For exercising undue influence.
What influence has he exercised?
Walking into Downing Street with a pass when he's got no right to be there.
But that's now been revoked. But what is the thing he's done wrong?
Well, he must have a reason.
What's the influence?
Well, we need a proper inquiry into why he was paying all this money over.
But donors are allowed to pay money into. He hasn't done.
But they do it.
That.
There's no such thing as a free lunch.
He's somebody who supported the Labour Party for decades now. He's come from a very humble background. Fine, if you show me any evidence of a conflict of interest or if he's done something bad. So let's say the Conservative Party took money off Frank Hester, who said that he wanted to shoot Diane Abbott, and they've said that they would continue to take money off him. If Wahid Ali had said anything like that or his conduct had showed anything, absolutely fine. But just show me any scintilla of evidence.
It's like you're throwing a party and you've got somebody who's talking loudly and dancing badly, and you go up to him and say, I'm sorry, mate, you can't be here anymore. You're ruining the party. That's what this guy's doing. He's wrecked the first 2 months of the Labour governorship. Why not just say, sorry, you've ruined the party?
But it's not. I just don't like you. There is a great tradition of people donating to political parties.
It's not great
in this country. Well, that's the way our politics is.
Well, it shouldn't be,
is funded. Well, you might say it shouldn't be funded. How would you then fund politics?
Not on the sly.
Would you?
Not on the sly like this. We need to.
But why is it on? I don't understand what you're saying. Why it's on the sly?
It's like about
if everything is declared.
But what's he doing it for? That's what I don't get.
He's somebody who cares deeply about.
If it's just
Jeffrey cares deeply about the Conservative Party.
Maybe that's enough.
He has spent decades of his life to the Conservative Party. Wahid Ali has done the same thing. You know, people who are very wealthy can have an interest in politics. That's not against the
Understood.
the law.
And I appreciate the great defence is that he's on the inside track. I'm just saying you could throw him out for essentially bad dancing. That's, you say, sorry, you've messed up the evening.
But I just feel like, I take the great tabloid point about trying to whip all of this up.
Just get him out.
But just show me your proof point of what he's...
You say whip it all up. I've been shocked by how many people. I expected one or two to come on and say, wait a moment, they've a right. No, it's been very one-sided. But I'm going to try and lighten it a bit because you two are having quite a fierce row. Harold Wilson, who I really liked, when I was a young member of Parliament, he was my first Prime Minister, and he told me the most wonderful story about money. He said, President Johnson once said, how much did it cost you to become Prime Minister, Harold? He said, well, now, let me think about it. I wrote a half a dozen letters. I made a few phone calls. I held a drinks party. Oh, I think about £100. Weren't those wonderful days?
Wonderful days.
Well, those
I'm told I have to...
We've got in America, Kamala Harris has raised $1 billion to fight it.
So I have to offer a slight correction on Frank Hester. You're going to enjoy this. He did not say he wants to shoot Diane Abbott. He says, this is coming to us from the lawyer, okay? He said, I hate all black women and she should be shot.
Oh, that's worse.
But he didn't say,
okay.
I know, we've gone into the third dimension here.
Clarification, but that does not
that is worse.
remove the utter...
You don't need to say that, clearly.
And I think we should keep Diane Abbott. She
okay.
getting the Tory party into
apparently
power.
He wants her shot, but the clarification I've been asked to say is that he didn't say he wanted to shoot her himself.
Right, okay,
So it's very important we make that clear. Everyone, okay?
Outsource it.
Let's just have a minute's silence for journalism there. Right.